Well, welcome everyone back to another episode of And It Matters Because, and today we're going to jump right into it. We have a great guest with us, but before we bring, surprise, him on, we're going to talk a little bit about AI and academic integrity. There's been a lot of articles recently about the impact of the other AI, artificial intelligence, on academic and testing integrity, including one we saw recently in Fortune, where a Brown University professor reported significant cheating on a midterm. You want to unpack this one for us, Rach?
Yeah, I'd love to, Jarret. So this was a Professor Roberto Serrano, and he was teaching a course at Brown in advanced economics. And his suspicion was that his class had used AI to cheat on an exam because he had found that about half of the class scored a perfect 100, which was well outside the norm for this class that he had taught in the past. So what he did was he told his class that he had found evidence of AI use, that one of the things that he did, not only was it what were they scoring outside the norm, but that he actually turned to ChatGPT, entered the questions in there, and found evidence that there was kind of this really convoluted way that they were answering in ChatGPT, and he was finding the same convoluted responses in the exam that he had delivered to his students. So he told them, hey, I found this. I'm not going to void your midterm, but when I give you your final at the end of this quarter, if your final performance doesn't match your midterm performance, then only your final exam is going to count. So you might have gotten 100 on the midterm, but if you come in and get 50 on your final, that's what's going to count. Now, if you come back in and you get close to that, great, you get them both. So that was kind of how that's how he handled it.
So interesting. So he goes forward. That was the midterm. What happened when finals came around? What did he find?
So this article reports that he had about 80 kids in that class. Almost a quarter of them, about 27, just dropped out after he had that conversation with them. And of the ones that dropped out, 22 of those had actually scored the 100 on the midterm. So sort of telling. He had then 59 who actually showed up to take the final on test day, and of those, 19 failed. And so, his conclusion was there was just strong empirical evidence that the fraud was overwhelming. And the article itself had some really interesting quotes. One was regarding trust in Brown University. And he said, the Brown label is Brown for a while, but if Brown continues to produce mediocre students who refuse to learn, sooner or later, the market is going to find out the Brown label is not what it used to be. And so he said, that, and I think this is a really interesting commentary on how we're trying to wrestle with artificial intelligence right now. He said the broader issue is that if workers are just going to press a button to ask an AI agent to do the work for them, that's inscribing a world in which humanity has chosen to become idiots. And it made me chuckle, but also kind of terrified me.
Yeah, right. But this is why we're doing this podcast, and this is why education and assessment really, matter. We need to, at the end of the day, say that you have a competence in this area, and you're not just deriving that from asking a question of an AI bot, right?
Absolutely. And we do that throughout our lives, right? Students in K-12, right? Can you read? Do you understand basic mathematical concepts? Do you understand how, civics work and social sciences work? We use assessments, not always standardized assessments, but sometimes they are, psychometrically developed. We use these assessments to really get a sense of, do people have the skills to take on a higher level of responsibility, whether that's a third grader going on to fourth grade and they're ready to actually tackle fourth grade content and subject matter, or whether that's a professional ready to launch into their career and actually become a nurse and give someone, an IV or give them immunization shots. So I think it is really important. And his comment was that we're not talking about this, and that's one of the worst problems. It's the worst way that we can treat the problem of AI in education. And kind of to your point, Jarret, that's that's why we have this podcast. It matters to talk about these issues. And our guest today is the Bryan Friess from Pearson. Woo, woo. And he is definitely going to take us deeper into the world of test fraud and, some of the things that he, through his role and through the work that Pearson does in our kind of broader test delivery system, what they're doing. So stick around. I think it'll be fun.
I agree. I think this is going to be fun. This is episode 5. I'm looking at it. I think we need to become just AIMB.
AIMB. We get to have an acronym now. And it matters because we get.
And it matters because.
So cool.
Yeah.
All right. I should probably do the disclaimer. Let's do it. All right. Yeah. As an attorney, what you're about to hear is not legal advice. We're not establishing an attorney-client relationship, but stay tuned for more AIMB.
Absolutely. When we're back, the Bryan Friess. Stay tuned.
Proctors face real pressure across many testing environments. That's why Cornerstone Strategies created the Professional Proctoring Series, training proctors for computer-based, paper-based, and online exams. Build professional confidence in proctoring today with Cornerstone Strategies, the Professional Proctoring Series.
Bryan, welcome to And It Matters Because. Thanks so much for joining us today. As we were talking earlier in the green room, you've been in the industry for quite some time. So tell us about Pearson and your role there for test delivery and security. How'd you get into test security? We all have an interesting story. So floor is yours.
Thanks, Jarret. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about exam security, my favorite topic. So as far as Pearson's concerned, Pearson's one of the largest learning and assessment companies in the world. And through Pearson View, what is now called Pearson Professional Assessments, because we recently rebranded, we deliver millions of exams each year for licensure, certification, academic, and professional programs throughout the world. Those exams support everything from like healthcare and cybersecurity to education, finance, and transportation, and bridges and stuff like that. I lead our information security team, which is focused on exam security, investigations, and intelligence gathering. My teams work across test centers, online testing, data forensics, threat intelligence again, and incident response. Do you think everybody, like one of the questions I had actually for you guys is, do you think everybody understands the difference in kind of like what the stakeholders for us would be and what the different delivery modalities would be?
No, I don't. I was even thinking like with remote testing, like what are we talking about with that? So tell us a little bit more.
Dive in.
Yeah. Okay. So Pearson as a whole, I think kind of has 3 main stakeholders, or at least as like from a security perspective, I think we have 3 main stakeholders. Exam sponsors, which are the people that actually create the exams that we deliver. So those are sort of our clients. And obviously we're responsible to them to making sure that we uphold the integrity of their certifications. Candidates who take the exams. So we're responsible for making sure that exams are delivered fairly across the entire candidate population. And then lastly, the public. And I don't think the public gets thrown in there a lot, but the reason I throw it in there is because we're talking about, in some cases, medical professionals or people that could do some serious damage if they're certified, but the certification isn't trustworthy. So that's kind of how I think about the stakeholders that we have. And then in terms of delivery, there's different ways that these exams can be delivered, right? There's there's brick and mortar test centers, which is where you go to like a computer, we'll call it an advanced computer lab, where you can take a test and you have people that are watching you take the test. And there's a whole bunch of security protocols that you go through in order to get in to take the test. But then there's also an online version of testing, or online proctoring, remote proctoring. I can't remember what the industry term is. I usually use them interchangeably. But that's where you're doing what we're doing now, and somebody's watching you through watching you take the exam through the webcam. Some of the things that you have to do in order to take the test are similar, but inevitably you're taking the test at home on your own, typically on your own device. And those are really kind of the 2 main big test delivery modalities. And obviously you guys know the security within each is a little bit different. What you would use each one of them for is a little bit different, but both pretty heavily used in today's like testing market.
Yeah. Hey,
So-
Bryan, I love what you were saying. I want to go back just a minute and talk about your stakeholders, because Pearson kind of sits in a really unique position. You have testing programs. So that might be an IT testing program. It could be a healthcare licensure program like nursing or medical doctors. It could be people who are trying to get their social work or their, what do I want to say, like crane operator license. So all sorts of different licensure and certification exams are developed by different, sometimes they're for-profit, sometimes not for-profit organizations. And they would come to you to say, hey, can you test our candidates for us? So Pearson then not only interacts with the people who develop these exams, but then the people who need to take them. That's what you were calling the candidates. And I think the reason you were saying you see the public as the stakeholder is because so many of these exams have to do with health, with safety, with, the welfare of the public, right? So Pearson kind of sits right in a really unique spot because you are helping to deliver those exams fairly and securely across all sorts of different professional workforce licensure, types of exams that are out there that people need to do a job or to be allowed to practice something.
Yeah, definitely 100%, Rachel. That's exactly right.
And as a member of the public, thank you.
Yes.
Because one of the reasons we have this podcast really is to bring awareness to that exact fact, right? That what we do matters. What you do matters. And it kind of is beyond the scope of the average, I think, thought process that we're talking about. So
I think so many people just assume that, you have to show up and take a test. Now, if you are a professional, if you had to go to like a Pearson Center to take a test, you might understand those unique instances. But there are so many professionals that are required to show their competency. And Pearson is a big part of, I'll call it the ecosystem. And I think you're a big part of that because of your security role in that. Yeah.
I think so, Rachel. Well, and what surprised me, I'll get into it in a second because you asked how I got into test security. But one of the things that surprised me when I got into test security is how much work goes into making the test as accurate and fair as you possibly can. Like, I had no idea that I once heard that the average cost of a test question is like $2,000. And that's just a simple multiple choice question with all the research and equating and all that sort of, all the test development sort of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. That's one of the things that amazed me, is how much work organizations put into creating exams and how expensive it is.
Yeah. I think that's a really great point. And so if you think of a, 100 question exam, if those questions on average are $2,000, you can imagine how much time and effort is going in just to design the exam. And then there's obviously cost to deliver it, score it, report it, all of those things. So and the use of those becomes very important, because it's not, oftentimes we think, well, how hard is it to deliver an exam? But to make sure that they're equated and that the exam that I would get would be, similar to an exam that you would get, Jarret, or you would get, Bryan, and that, we can defend it if someone says, hey, you're not doing a good job with that. And there have been legal cases calling programs to account for defending the fairness of their exam, the reliability and the validity of the results. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into making sure that people are getting reliable data coming out of that. So thank you for taking a little time to share that.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess at the end of the day, I think our mission is to ensure that candidates have a fair opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge, and also ensure that every score reflects their ability.
Yes, I think, and I think as a candidate, again, that stakeholder group, I have been in that stakeholder group. I know you guys have been too. You appreciate that, right? Because you don't want your test to be harder than someone else's. You don't want somebody else to be able to cheat, and you have to go through all the steps. And it can be very expensive to take these exams. You want the exam to be fair, and you want the outcome to be something that you can rely on as well. So tell us, how did you get into test security?
Default, like everybody. I was walking around and there was a sign that said, no, I'm just kidding. I got into test security, like kind of, it's actually by default. Like I have a background in development, cybersecurity, and then like project management. And I got into cybersecurity. So originally I worked at Target. Their headquarters is in Minnesota. And I was in cybersecurity at Target, and I'm like, man, I don't want to do this. I didn't really like it at the time. And then I came to Pearson and worked on our development team for a while, and then got involved in security at Pearson. And then the gentleman at the time that was in charge of security for us was like, hey man, I'm starting this new team called Threat Intelligence and Investigations. Do you want to do it? And I was like, dude, sure, why not? And so then I just kind of got into it from there. And then it just kind of snowballed into a bunch of, into a bunch of investigations work, into a bunch. And then once, online proctoring kind of came into play, a lot of the ways that we started to look at security became more digital or cybersecurity focused and that sort of stuff. And then I got lucky along the way. Like I sort of got investigations training from some folks that have legal backgrounds, Pinkerton, actually, like we worked closely with them when I first started. And then just through engaging with law enforcement. So I kind of got lucky in terms of like getting investigations training sort of on the fly as we went. Well, but that's how I got into it.
Pearson does a fantastic job of trying to stay abreast of what's happening out there, keeping their clients informed of what you're coming up against. So I know you have been a big part of that growth there. Why is test security important to Pearson? Why is it important to your testing programs, and to you?
Well, I think without, like, just to put it in like a one sentence thing, without trust in the exam, then the credentials lose value. So if you can't trust if you can't trust it, then the credential kind of loses value, right? And you definitely don't want that to be the case with people that are teaching our children or operating on you.
Or flying airplanes.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
That's a good one. Immediate negative impact.
Yes. Let's say impact.
Yeah, and especially in today's, I was just thinking about this the other day, and I know we haven't gotten into AI and all those sorts of things yet, but if you think about how well AI can craft your resume to align to a position, you could easily see how people, so I think it's starting to matter more probably to employers as well. So I think with everything, there's probably a pendulum that kind of swings heavy, we want people to have credentials before they come to work for us, and then it probably swings the other way a little bit. Oh, we're not as focused on that. But I think it's probably with AI going to swing back to, we want people to have credentials and verified knowledge, because with AI, it's so easy to fictitiously generate some of that stuff, or maybe embellish your experience a little bit. So I think it's going to start to matter, not only the public, but I think it's going to matter to employers a little bit more too. Starting now, I guess, maybe. But yeah, so I think it's important for us to be able to protect the validity of the exams, because obviously that public trust, employers need it. With AI, it's just going to get harder, because people are going to be able to use AI to, again, do some of the things that we talked about. So I think that's probably.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Bryan. I think we started off this particular episode talking about how a professor was sort of lamenting what he was seeing from his students in terms of AI use. And, there has to be some way for us to sort of objectively understand someone's knowledge, skills, abilities, competencies. And, it sounds sort of simple to say, well, then just sit down, do an interview with everybody, have them do some kind of authentic performance. And there are some ways to do that, but overall, that becomes a really inefficient method for us to really measure someone's capabilities. So I do think standardized assessment and the psychometrically designed exams will continue to be important. I completely agree with you. And we have seen that pendulum kind of come back, even during COVID, a lot of colleges, for example, went test optional, and now they're finding that
Mhm.
has
More
really
and more
had a
in person.
negative effect
Yeah.
on their
Yeah.
student population.
It's kind of crazy, right? Like I wasn't sure that was going to be the case.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think, yeah. So it's been an interesting shift, that's for sure. Well, and I think the other thing that's important too is to, but you have all these other things too that you do to try to help ensure, like, that are built into the way that you deliver an exam, that kind of help ensure that the security and integrity of it as well. So things that people don't even think about, like the way that a test is designed. You mentioned like the psychometric and validity of the test. But what folks don't understand is, some of the reasons that you might have different types of questions on the test is to build security into the exam, right? So that you're not just, you just can't go memorize A, B, 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 C. You have to actually drag and drop different things and things like that. So, building security into the exam is a big thing. Like all the different layers that you can use to protect an exam program. Authorizations, so making sure that you prove your background before you're actually authorized to take a test and things like that are super important. But it's also kind of, I guess, a theme that's starting to emerge from our conversation is things that the general public doesn't know about that go into exams. And
Well,
so
I think it also, so one of the questions I was going to ask you are, what are some of the big changes that we've seen over time, right? And so even just talking about authenticating someone, 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been talking about, hey, if I'm taking my exam remotely, am I a deep fake? Am I a virtual machine? So talk a little bit about some of the changes that you've seen.
Yeah, deepfakes is an interesting one because I just read, and I'm going to quote a statistic that I can't back up, but a deepfake injection type of attacks, I think I saw somewhere that those had risen like almost 500% over the course of the last year or something crazy like that.
So much so we're not even talking to Bryan.
Right.
Exactly. So yeah, it's like I'm a Bob Ross video from TikTok.
Yeah.
Just kidding. If you get, sorry. No, so I think obviously AI has changed a lot of the ways that we think about exam security, our industry in general, the use of AI, candidates' ability to use AI. But for exam security in particular, it's the bad dudes or the bad guys' ability to use AI. So it's really increased their ability to, I'll say, professionalize cheating, and also. And that's through the use of AI. So that what used to be, like you mentioned, Rachel, like I think about how you used to be able to, if you wanted to commit fraud, like with a check, the barrier to entry to like commit check fraud was high. You had to get the right check stock. You had to have the right check codes. You had to be able to print the checks, all that sort of stuff. And then when kind of the digital age took over, the barrier to entry to commit check fraud like reduced drastically because the ability to regenerate, you could do it from your phone.
Right.
AI has created the same thing for cheaters, right? They can proliferate their stolen questions or study guides at scale relatively quickly using AI. You don't have to have a professional person to be able to answer the questions for you anymore. You can use AI to try to generate the answers yourself. So it's really decreased the barrier for bad dudes to enter the exam security market. And it's also helped them professionalize their operations, advertise on social media, approach people on LinkedIn and things like that. So AI has really enabled sophistication amongst our bad guys.
Yeah. Even I want to kind of talk about the deepfake piece again. It used to be, if I needed somebody to take the test for me, I would have to say, Bryan, can you, find somebody who looks kind of like me, or can you have somebody who maybe doesn't look like me at all, but I'll give you all of my details and we'll create a, hopefully realistic looking fake ID, and they'll have to show up in person to take this exam.
Yeah.
And then, we went to, well, now we could have me sit in front of the computer and you could try and hack into the delivery system from, 3 states away, 3 continents away. And you could actually answer the questions, even though it looks like I'm sitting in front of the camera. I may have even presented to test. So all of a sudden that digital environment just becomes so critical, and it's very difficult for us to use kind of common methods that we had 20 years ago to really confirm who is answering questions. And then you throw the deep fake in, which you could deep fake someone's face, you could deep fake their voice. So a lot of different biometric markers that we were using to make sure we understood, yep, this is, Schoenig sitting in front of this camera, or this is Schoenig who, presented to read off these her answers to a language exam. All of a sudden that biometric marker has become less reliable because of the deep fake capabilities that generative AI has kind of democratized, to your point, right? It's
for sure.
made it so much more accessible to, you don't have to be like a tech nerd deep in the weeds. You can use commercially available services.
You just have to get on Reddit
to generate code if you want.
Yeah, find these instructions there.
It's nuts. And
so
deep fake IDs too. Like, we didn't use this. Like, quick plug for digital identity. So kudos to the international, the government organizations that are starting to force requirement of digital IDs, because that's going to help us. I think it won't eliminate deepfakes, but and I realize this is a bit of a tangent, but it'll definitely help us be able to validate an individual's identity a lot more if you have to tie it to a device, a session, and a person than just a one-time static IP check. Good luck trying to fake you're 21 if bars start using digital IDs.
Do you want to share with folks, just in case they're not familiar with what that is? Tell them just a little bit about that.
Yeah, so digital IDs is basically, I think of it like a credit card in your wallet on your iPhone, but it's your ID. So you would go through some type of validation and verification mechanism that would then create a digital identity for you, like an ID in your Apple Wallet that you can then use to validate yourself. For us, it would be at the time of exam delivery, and then probably throughout the exam delivery. But what's different is if you have an ID now, you're just presenting, like for us, you're just presenting that ID statically, either at the testing center or at the beginning of your online test delivery. With a digital ID though, because it's in your Apple Wallet, it's tied to your device. So whatever mechanism you use to validate your identity off the bat is cryptographically tied to your phone. And then whenever I want to use it, I have to unlock my phone, which is typically biometric controlled. So you kind of get two security benefits right off the bat with the digital. So for us, from a test security perspective, it's going to help, not totally eliminate, but it'll help reduce the number of deep fakes that people can try to inject during the testing process.
Yeah, it could be spoofed, but it would take several more steps than what we see right now. And, that's not to say that people don't plan ahead and take those steps, but it just makes it that much more complicated and expensive to try and go that route.
Exactly. Well, and then it also raises the bar. So a lot of the folks that are creating digital identity digital identities that go into digital wallets are also enabling you to be able to tie your credential to it. So your credential then gets tied to your digital identity. So then spoofing those credentials becomes even more difficult and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, I got on it's a geeky tangent to get into, but since we care about making sure that Bryan is taking the test that Bryan says he's taking, it's a pretty big advancement in my opinion. So that's why I brought it up.
So Bryan, you bring up a really interesting point, and I don't think, in talking about this, I don't think a lot of people have actually thought about the fact that you can use a biometric to unlock. And then, you have that second layer there. Are you aware of any of the current wallets that do a facial match against the actual photo in the ID? So what I'm saying, for example, if I brought my phone, but I'd set up your ID, you and I had set up your ID on my phone, did all the things to set it up appropriately. I walked in with you on my phone. Are you aware of any wallets that are actually referencing my unlock to the actual profile? That'd be interesting as the next step of whether that will work to assist us.
No, I think, so I think most probably will, Jarret. I don't know of any off the top of my head that I can say for sure this product does, but I think about, what's the one? I just do my taxes.
Okay.
obviously a few months ago, because I wasn't late. If you're part of the IRS and you're listening to this podcast, I did it by April 15th. But no, you have to go through
11:59.
I know, like, the dudes are watching. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, the one that you have to use to validate your identity.
ID.me?
The IRS. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that when you go to create your digital identity or your digital wallet, you're going to have to do something similar to that, where you have to present your face, and they do the matching between when you present your face and the ID. So I'm assuming most wallets will probably have some type of verification like that. So you'll get, but this is a good point, because then you get it twice, right? Like you'll get it during 100%. The process, and you'll get it when they have to unlock their phone. But for us, I wonder if the capability will exist, or this would be a good idea to be able to then proactively match, you know, because a lot of online proctored vendors today will match, you know, face. They won't use facial recognition. They'll use an anonymized version of your face so that they can get around the facial recognition problem with privacy laws. But let's just, for the sake of argument, say that they can do that. Anyway, long story short, you could be able to then do it kind of three ways, right? Like you could go back to the original facial comparison in the digital wallet, the face at the time of delivery, and then the ID. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot of cool, like it'd be cool to just like sit around and have a conversation about this separately, because there's going to be a lot of cool stuff that we're going to be able to do when some of these things start to hit.
Yeah, I think that's, I think one of the things that we talk about oftentimes, right, in our profession, and that's regardless of whether it's how you're designing your exam, delivering your exam, or the work that professionals are doing using technology, that technology can be used for good and for evil. And I think this is a great example of, people trying to use technology to bring deepfakes, and then other people using technology to enhance and, create more confidence in the authentication of a person who is actually submitting answers. And there's a lot of different layers there that we think about in a super nerdy way. I totally get it. But there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of people who are thinking about this, because it is a very important thing, reflecting back on what we talked about earlier, to make sure that if I'm giving Bryan, license to go ahead and start practicing medicine, it was actually Bryan who showed up to take the exam, answer the questions, and that I'm ascribing whatever decision I'm making regarding his competency to him, and not to some other person, or what we're seeing now, actually, instead of a smart person, to your point, a professional who knows the answers to this nursing exam, a smart machine who does, we know that these various generative AI systems out there and the models out there are doing a great job of training on lots of different data, and they are able to answer some of these professional licensure exams very effectively. And we want to make sure that it was actually Bryan the human doing this, not a deep fake Jarret sitting behind the wheel, or a deep fake AI model sitting behind the wheel answering those questions. So I think technology has a lot of things that we see as a concern, but also some really cool things that are coming down the pike to allow us to continue to have confidence in the assessments and the licensure process that we have in place. Okay, we're going to pivot just a little bit. I mean, we talked about, generally why testing is important, but I want to kind of get into some cases, and we should talk about those generically, Bryan. I don't want you to have to, reveal any confidences, or, have to plead the fifth on anything here. So we want you to talk about things generically, but to get into some of the examples that, and you have had plenty of these. I know I have. Jarret's been on some of these investigations that really, to me, underscore why fair testing is important, and also how some of our federal and state or provincial policies can really drive someone's behavior, and really drive some of the motivators for how people engage in these assessments, and whether they're doing that in a way that allows us to rely on the outcome or not. So I know, for example, we talked earlier that Pearson delivers a number of healthcare exams, workforce exams, professional licensure exams as well, both domestically or in the North American market, as well as internationally. So when we think of, let's just kind of remind folks, when we think of those professional licensure exams, like nursing or insurance, what do you generally see as the purpose of those? Professional nursing exam. Yeah, or a licensure exam.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, so usually it's part of a bundle of things that prove your competence in order to be able to practice, right? Like, so it's usually, so if I think about like nursing, for example, you have a degree plus probably some clinical experience, then plus a certification exam that then you present to a licensure board or internationally in like a registry or something like that, and then that's what inevitably proves your competence to be able to practice as that. Same thing probably for engineering or pilots or any of those sorts of things. And so that's part of the basis of what then makes me feel comfortable with somebody popping an IV in my arm.
Right. Or in your child's arm, right? Like, it's one thing if you're like, yeah, I'll take a risk. But when you start thinking about people who are taking care of your children or elderly parents, you're like, yeah, I want to know that you know what you're doing before you start.
And teachers,
teachers are a great example.
Teachers are another example of like something that people didn't think about. There was a press conference in Florida recently about a situation there. There's been some other stuff that's happened that we've been a part of in a variety of like states internationally related to education, because that's one of the things we're trying to like talk about more is just the fact that like, hey, you've potentially got an educator teaching your kid, like teaching our children biology that doesn't know biology, and that seems problematic. Like that seems that it's not being authentic for our kids. They're giving our kids the best opportunity possible to learn, right? So we've tried to partner more with law enforcement nationally and internationally to try to focus a little bit more on some of the teacher kind of aspects of things, as well as the traditional like medical types of investigations and things like that too. One thing that I also wanted to mention is just the amount of there's also fraud that can take place, with. So one of the things that you can do, that this happens a lot more internationally, but if you can demonstrate a unique skill in an area where there's a shortage, then sometimes you can get bumped to the top of the list to immigrate to a country. You can get bumped to the top of the list to get a visa or things like that. So if you're in a country or in a geography where maybe socioeconomically it's not performing as well as a different geography, and there's a shortage of X profession, in a geography, you could try to leverage, the ability to get fast tracked for immigration status, to get on some kind of a registry or a license, and drastically change your socioeconomic situation like really, really quickly. Yeah. In those situations, the stakes is pretty high for those individuals, and the monetary values that folks are willing to pay to get part of their exam package or package that it would take to get a license or on a registry, they'll pay quite a bit of money. And that's one of the things that surprised me when I got into test security, is how much people are willing to pay for some of these different types of certifications.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We talk about stakes. We talk about stakes in a way like that stakes that you eat, but the benefits that this holds for someone, when we talk about stakes, that's really what we're talking about. The benefits or the losses are very high. And I think thinking about it from a visa or an immigration perspective, that's where oftentimes language exams, healthcare around the globe, there is a huge need for healthcare providers. And so those are really great examples of, particular types of exams that people may be motivated to get involved in. And I think anytime that there is a stake or benefit, and usually it's financial, and we'll come back to that in just a minute, if you can find those drivers, you can start to see what might be motivating people and how they are organizing to maybe get to those benefits without having to actually earn the credential or actually demonstrate their knowledge because they've purchased a service from someone else. So I wanted to ask you, in your experience, let's just generally talk about how, if there are concerns with a professional licensure exam, how have those come to your attention?
A lot of times it comes through in data.
Mhm.
So without giving away the techniques, no, the patterns in data, in a variety of different patterns in data, but usually it'll come through in the data in some way. And generically speaking, I can say it could be patterns that exist in answering questions or a test, or patterns in digital data, things like that, without
Yeah.
getting too much into the weeds.
So, Bryan,
But
I think for our audience, this is a great area to unpack a little bit and kind of go in deep without giving away any too much information from any recent events. But when you see that data, right, one of the questions that often comes up is like, what do you do next? Like, how do you begin an investigation into this, and kind of what does it look like from your perspective? So the red flags beeping on the data, uh, but the case is overseas. So what does the process kind of look like for you?
So for us, let's say, to your point, Jarret, let's say there's an identification of an anomaly pattern in data.
Mm-hmm.
What we would do, what we would do then is we would investigate those anomalous patterns, but we would look for, like the data is kind of like a flashlight shining, you're shining your light on maybe a specific area that you might need to go look into or dig deeper into. And so from there, it would depend on the delivery modality. So where was the exam delivered? Were they online exams or test center exams or a mix of both? And then that would kind of drive the physical things, that what I'll call physical things or digital things that we can look at to try to determine if maybe there was something happened during that exam delivery. So if it's a test center, we have things like that. I'm not giving away any secret sauce here. We have things like video footage that we can review. We have exams are invigilated, so there are folks that watch the exam. So there are proctors and invigilators that we can talk to find out if was there something that sparked their attention during those exam deliveries or things like that. There's also check-in stuff that happens. So whenever you take a test center or an online exam, you go through a check-in process where usually your photo will get taken. You have to present your ID, which we talked about. You may have to do a digital signature and agree to a candidate rules agreement or things like that. So we can look at all that sort of data as well. And then there's a whole plethora of digital data that we can look at, whether it's test center or online, related to the exam delivery as well, to try to see if there's any type of a footprint going on of something that might have been inappropriate. And so we'll go down the end, but what we do in particular is there's a cybersecurity framework called the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and it's what cybersecurity organizations use to try to take a look at threats. And we have our own framework kind of like that for exam security. And then we have what we call run books, which are basically their investigation series of things that you would go through based on the type of data pattern that presented itself. So we kind of follow that.
Do you ever get law enforcement involved on the other end?
Yeah, we do. So and that can be kind of interesting. So, I mentioned that we have various stakeholders at the very beginning, and one of those stakeholders is the exam sponsor. And so a lot of times we'll work with the exam sponsor when we find something that's going on in order to try to engage law enforcement. And there's a variety of ways in which you can do that. You can, one of the things that's been helpful is we've been able to develop relationships with different agencies over the years and doing some of this stuff. So once you kind of get a little bit of a network going, you can try to get help or interest that way. As well. And then internationally, sometimes one of the things that we like to do is try to get somebody local. If we're dealing in a country that we don't typically deal in, we'll try to find somebody local that'll help us get law enforcement involved. But yeah, law enforcement does get involved, and they're great to they're great to work with, whether it's nationally or internationally. Once you start talking about some of the public impact, they do care. I think one of the things we shifted is we used to focus on the fact that we talked about $2,000 per question, 100 question test. I don't have a calculator, but that's like $200,000 asset that just potentially got stolen or was compromised in some way. And so when we first started trying to deal with law enforcement, we focus on that and be like, oh my God, they just robbed us of $200,000. But one of the things that shifted is we started to focus more on the other types of crimes that were being committed, like wire fraud, and things like that, versus like intellectual property theft. And that's helped with getting law enforcement engaged. Whereas, you know, if you just say, oh, somebody stole $200,000 worth of test questions, they're like, yeah, well, I've got 4 murder cases that I'm dealing with right now. So so trying to get, so a mindset shift for us was trying to make it more, not appealing, but to actually like get at the other crimes that were being committed in some of these cases. And that's helped get law enforcement involved too. So yeah, they definitely get involved.
Yeah. So what are some of the things, just generically speaking, that you have found? So as you started to investigate, what are some of the issues that have come to your attention where people have, you know, really taken concerted steps to try and engage in fraud and engage in some of this mail and wire fraud kind of, you know, concern like you would see under a RICO statute, for example?
Yeah, so it's organized, like it's organized testing. It's organized test fraud. And the other thing that I never thought, like, you know, okay, so I talked about my background early on. Some of the international fraud organizations that we're dealing with, because there's so much money in it, they are actually affiliated with organized crime in certain countries, which surprised the heck out of me when we first started doing some of these investigations and learned that. Like we've had situations where one investigation included like reference to a biker gang and things like that. So like, because it starts to get tied in with like medical fraud and large scale medical fraud and things like that. So organized crime gets included relatively quickly. I can't remember, what was the original question? I tangented because I got all excited.
Yeah, just some of the things that you found. So organized crime.
Organized crime was, organized crime is definitely one of them. The other thing that is the ability for the cheaters to operate globally. So like, you know, they can operate, and social media allows them to be able to basically advertise and operate on a global level. So that just increases the amount of money that they can make, because they can go to all these different areas within the world to, you know, do bad things. And then the last thing that really kind of surprised me was, like, I hadn't seen the immigration piece of it, but the immigration deal, it's a big deal for you to be able to, you know, bump yourself up the list to get priority, to get into another, because everything changes. Like you go from a situation where you have no healthcare to, you know, you do for your whole family, and now you're making a steady paycheck where you weren't before. Like it's a really, really big deal, and a lot bigger than what I thought. And it's funny because like I think about, somebody would want to pay X to get a medical certification, but the biggest dollar amounts that I've seen tied to people that are committing or impersonation tests and proxy testing are always tied to exams that can increase your ability to immigrate to certain countries. Like the English as second language testing, like huge dollar amounts are being exchanged to try to get high scores on those tests, which that surprised. That was something that seems kind of obvious after you talk about it, but like going into it, it's something I didn't think about.
I think that's one of the reasons that we have this podcast, and it matters because in like, even in our own experience, there were things that were happening in this area that it just was mind blowing. And we do need to understand and appreciate the importance of these exams for our own, just as a public, you know, member of the public, our own health, safety, and welfare, and how our policies can drive, you know, whether that's at the state level, at the federal level, can drive people's behavior. You know, a great example being what you just talked about, the visa policies, and, you know, whether a particular profession is one that gets bumped up on the immigration list because it's a profession that we need, more people to be in. And that's any country, right? I'm not just talking about the United States. It might be Canada. It could be the UK. It could be Australia. It could be Germany. There are just a lot of different policies out there that end up becoming motivators. And we certainly have seen a dramatic shift. There's still a lot of, I'm going to call it DIY, do it yourself kind of, small cheating incidents where like I might be like, Jarret, I need help. Can you just take this test for me? That kind of thing. Yeah. But we have just seen such a proliferation in these organized, commercial services. I mean, these are businesses. And, especially when it comes to immigration or, landing a visa, what we also see is these services don't just stop at, yeah, Bryan, I can, make sure that you're able to pass this exam. And I'll help you fill out your visa application and I'll get you a place to stay. And I will, there's a human trafficking element that starts to come into play. Like maybe when you get there, I'll hold all your documents until you've paid me back. And there is such a more complex ecosystem around all of this. And I think it's why, kind of going back to what we were talking about with law enforcement, it's been one of the ways to help law enforcement be interested in this, because they're right? Like if this is just a private, hey, you stole my stuff. Yes, there's laws against that, but we've got, law enforcement is out there trying to take care of some really big societal issues. So you know what? There's a civil court. Go sue them, right? Ask them for your $200,000 back that you just think you lost. Yeah. But when you put it in this broader context, there is a lot of potential harm to the public, which is really what we have law enforcement out there to help us with. And that really starts to shift the conversation and say, this isn't just about a kid coming up with a fake ID so they can take their language assessment. This is about a much bigger framework that is being used to defraud, basically, our immigration system, defraud maybe some of our financial funding for colleges, or for placing someone at a university or a medical hospital for residency purposes. And it really, you start to see that snowball effect, and it absolutely starts to get law enforcement attention when you frame it that way, not, oh gosh, I just lost a whole bunch of money on a test that now someone has stolen from me. I think that's why, to me, this matters so much, that we talk about it and we think about and ask our lawmakers and the public and educational institutions to really appreciate some of the broader ramifications when they ignore these kinds of things, right? So ignoring the fact that there's there are these commercial operations out there, and we have very few laws in the United States to address those. We should fix that, right? I mean, those are just some of the for me anyway, the drivers and the passion, because I love what we do. I do think we open doors for people, and I do think we make a difference in people's lives, both for the test takers as well as the public who are benefited by it. But it doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen without kind of this broader security effort that has to go just beyond the Pearsons and the commercial, and the testing programs, right? So go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. No, I was just going to say, like, I was just, as I was thinking about this a little bit more, we didn't used to track how many times we engaged with law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Like early on in my career of doing this, we would have probably 1 or 2 cases a year where like we were engaged with law enforcement. And that was kind of the typical scenario. But as we started to shift, because we do have some of the exam sponsors that we deliver for are their exams are used to provide legitimacy to folks that are part of human traffic. They're being human trafficked. I don't know if that's not enough coffee, but you get what I mean. Yep. And as we started to partner with and they've started to partner with law enforcement, it started to snowball. So like this year alone, we're already at 30 cases, about 30 cases where we partnered with law enforcement. Yeah. Which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're like a couple years ago, that would have been like 1 or 2. And now we're up to 30 so far.
Yeah.
We're only halfway through the year. Yeah. I mean,
which is actually great, because we're helping like have an impact on human trafficking and things like that. Yeah. Whereas
Well, and I think a lot of it is awareness, as you and Rachel had said. I mean, I remember actually my first session that I ever saw you at was actually on this topic at ATP. And honestly, it just exploded my brain thinking at that point, being new to the industry. This was a few years back, like last year. But a few years back, Brian, and like you just delivered a very poignant message and brought all the pieces together, areas of transport across the United States, ports of entry, how they use certification and licensure to legitimize the entire process. And I think that story needs to be continue to be told, because I think the average individual doesn't connect any of their daily routine with the potential back end of how a person could be trafficked just to bring them, a massage or their cosmetology desires, etc. So thanks for continuing to pull that forward and kind of get things going. I think we're at that point, guys. I think we're at the point it's time for our next section. We're going to take kind of more the heavy topic, bring it to the surface. We're going to play a game.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. Okay.
All right.
Brian, we're going to play a game called Never Have I Ever, which you may have played in college, but this is different. So, first of all,
hold on.
Okay, so we're back for kind of our game portion. As Jarret said, we're going to shift gears from some really serious conversation and play a game. So this game, Brian, is called Never Have I Ever. You may have played this in college, probably as a drinking game. I don't know.
I did. Do I need to get a beer for this?
I think that's up to you. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. So
how about coffee?
We'll go for it.
No, just kidding.
No. I don't know how many times you're gonna have to drink and how that coffee is gonna hit you. So
it's not looking good.
No. Okay. Well, we'll see. So we're gonna give you the phrases, and if you have to tell us if you've had to do that. And just so you know, we did play this with the godfather of test security, Ray Nicosia. So really? We're gonna see how you stack up to Ray.
So there's like a competition. Is it?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, he didn't know it at the time, but
how do I win? Is it by doing more have I evers?
Yes, I think that's how you win.
All right,
yeah.
All right, cool.
Okay, so here's your first one. Jarret, do you want to go?
Yeah. All right. Ryan, never have I ever seen a proctor tackle a cheater?
I've never
seen.
Never. Oh, wait, yes, I have. Yes, I have. Yep, I have.
What happened?
It was actually internationally, and the cheater had a device. And we have a policy that we're like, if it's your phone, right? We can't like confiscate your phone. We can't confiscate your device. But the proctor wanted to get a picture of it, and the candidate was like, nope, and then took off, and they went and took off after him.
Nice. And did you get it on CCTV?
I don't know if they tackled him or not. Yeah, we got it on CCTV.
Did you save the CCTV?
Yeah. No, we don't have the CCTV anymore due to restrictions with how long we could store the CCTV.
But at the time, did you like rewind and then play it again and rewind and play it again just to be like, man?
We did.
It's like superhero proctor right there.
Yeah, we definitely did. But to that point, I don't know if they tackled him. I think they just grabbed him and tried to turn him around so they could get the. So
I mean, you got to wrap him up and take him down. Otherwise, it's not really a tackle.
Yeah, so this could be like a PK and a draw if I tie with Ray.
Yeah, well, Rachel, have you ever seen?
I have not. No, I have, because usually, and I know Brian's going to say this too. You're right. Yeah. Usually, we're telling proctors like you don't want to physically touch the candidate or even their property. So no, I have not like witnessed that or seen it on CCTV. I would lose that. I'd have to take a drink of my.
So I'd have to take a drink too, but I'm going to share. I actually have one by proxy, and it's actually a little plug. Test Proctor Share All Volume 2 is coming out. It's going to be in there. This was shared by a test center network colleague through the National College Testing Association. Right mid-COVID, there was an individual who was absolutely irate in the testing center, refused to do a couple of things. There was a lot going on right then, right? But I believe the story goes that they were about to engage like in an activity that would have been potentially harmful to other test takers, and the proctor was like, this can happen to my testing center, and just grabbed this person, like deadlift them, marched them out of the center, put them in the hallway, closed the door, locked it, and called the police. And he's like,
That's
I
awesome.
don't think I should have done that. But at the time, it was just like a switch, and I just had to get them out of there. Nobody was going to hurt my testing center, our candidates. It was great.
You know what's crazy in the scenario that I gave too, by the way. So we have like within our test centers, we have different test channels. So we have a Pearson owned test channel where it's like our employees and network and centers. And then we have like third party test centers. Usually those are more internationally focused. And in this particular case, it was a third party test center that did it. And like I said, I don't know that they tackled him, but they definitely grabbed him. which is surprising how like hardcore our invigilators are, because a lot of them are like retired teachers or things like that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you're chill.
You don't mess with them. You
Yeah.
do not mess with them.
Teachers, man.
All right, so we're going to go to our next Never Have I Ever. And this is never have I ever seen a cheating device embedded in someone's body.
Embedded?
Embedded.
No, I've never seen a cheating device embedded in someone's body.
Like so we've certainly had instances where it's, you know, the really tiny earbuds that get impacted in their ear.
Does that count as embedded?
Yeah.
Like if they have a tiny earbud that's embedded? I guess it's
Yeah.
embedded. I was thinking more like somebody that had like a tracking device
like
skin.
under their arm or
Yeah.
something.
Oh no,
yeah,
that
then
might be
that-
half a point
then
though.
definitely.
I think The Godfather had an actual embedded device, right? Surgically embedded.
And
I think he
well,
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think he does too.
Yeah.
And we've definitely seen tattoos, which I mean, it's hard now
Yeah.
whether those were, you know, henna tattoos or that would eventually go away, but definitely have seen lots of, you know, cheating efforts embedded in tattoos or actually tattooed on someone's body.
Yeah, one of the craziest ones I ever saw was actually people that had stuff on their fingernails,
Yes.
like under fake nails,
Yes.
which surprised me because I'm like, how would you even see that?
Yeah. We
Well,
had
young
one
eyes.
where the girl, she was well endowed and she had a lot of cheat sheets, basically like cheat notes stuffed in her cleavage.
Yep.
Which I will say again, thankfully the proctor did not go in there and ask for them back, but she did have to pull them out and give them to the proctor, which again, that was a former teacher as well. There you go.
All right. Our next one, Brian, never have I ever seen a cheater fake a passport.
Oh, fake a passport? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Period.
Yeah.
Never
Yeah,
have I ever
there.
seen a cheater fake a passport? Question mark.
Yeah,
Okay.
Am I
Yeah,
answering those right? Is it like?
Yeah.
Because typically,
No,
I just
no.
Yeah.
It's not like Jeopardy. You have to answer with the
Okay,
question. But like, all right. So I'm always curious about that one. Was it just a fake passport to get in, or did they embed like answers in their passport book so they would try to use them during the exam?
I've seen. I don't know that I've ever seen. I can't recall ever having seen somebody use like embed answers, but I've definitely seen some like really sus passports. Like there was one where the picture was like really bad, right? Like you would like the picture was a blue background, had a blue background on it, and you're like, wait a second, what passport? what international organization? Like what country gives a passport with like a blue background?
I will
So,
tell you
yeah,
one of the
I've
things
seen
that surprised me. So, you know, ACT tests minors oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I was surprised about is how keyed in they were into the fake ID scene. Now, I get it with a driver's license. I'm like, okay, you're trying to get into a bar. I get it. But passports, I was shocked at the extent that they would go to create, and some of those were really, really good, to create fake passports, which just felt like such a different level to me. And they were so young. I was just really shocked at, you know, the age that they were kind of keyed into that whole market.
Smart though, because if you have a fake passport, you're golden, right? Like if you have a fake passport that's stood up a couple times, like your confidence level of like using that document would probably be, I would think, pretty high, because it's like, well, I could get into a country with this.
Yeah.
Can do stuff with this.
They weren't that good though, which is why we knew it. But
Touche.
they were, you know, you need to give them an A for effort. But wow. Okay. Never have I ever seen a test taker use a DIY cheating device.
I have.
All right. Tell us about it.
The most recent one was someone had a phone duct tape, like a really small phone duct tape to a button camera, and they had a clicker on there, and they were using a haptics app on the phone to basically share questions with AI, and they had a clicker that was on their big toe.
Yeah.
And so that's how they were clicking the pictures. And we interviewed the person that did this, and what was funny is, it wasn't funny, but what he said was originally I just had it recording, like I was going to have it recording the whole time, but then it was really challenging to have, because they were using Google OCR to translate the picture to text, and then sending the text to Gemini, and then getting the answer back. And then
Okay, hold on. I'm going to slow down because I'm guessing we know what OCR means and even haptic, but explain that just a little bit. So when you say haptic, you mean?
Yeah, haptic is vibrating on your phone.
Right. So like if you turn the sound off on your cell phone, but it also like when a text comes in or something like that. So haptic means he had it up here and it would just vibrate against his chest. And then OCR means?
I think it stands for optical character recognition. So it's the ability to convert an image with text to text.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was a similar situation actually that got reported a couple of years ago out of Turkey. Same kind of concept where they were trying to use Gen AI, which was pretty novel use of it at the time. I think it's become a little less novel, but yeah. So, okay. So he's trying to use OCR, and how did he get busted, and what was he telling you?
So he was using batches. Like originally he was going to send the pictures in batches, but then he was like, then it's really hard to get the answers back. So he took, one of the clickers that you use if you want to take a family picture, but you don't have a photographer, and you're like, I need to click. Yeah. He got one of those, modified it to fit on his toe, and he was going to click with his toe when he needed to take the picture to get the question and then the answer back, and it would vibrate once for A, 2 for B, and all that sort of stuff. He got caught. We have earlier this year we introduced some new devices to basically check candidates for button cameras and things like that, and RF signals. And so he got caught on the camera detection and the RF signal detection.
And RF signals are
like Bluetooth and
so radio frequency signals.
Radio frequency signals,
yeah. So devices that might be really hard to find otherwise, just through a visual inspection, you can use some of the waves. The radio frequency waves that would be detectable by devices like a Bluetooth detects another device. You're just using a different device to detect those. Out
of curiosity, Brian, was this in person? Was this remote? Was he taking the test at home? Like, was it at a center?
It was at a test center. It was in person. Yeah, he was in person. And they got him before. Like, it was during the. Yeah, it was obviously before. It was while they were sweeping.
Yeah. Kudos to
Did they
the
tackle
proctor.
him? Full on tackle?
They did not. They just said no. They didn't. And there we had kind of suspected maybe that there were some individuals that were showing up that day with some stuff. So there were people there.
Nice. Congrats.
Very cool.
So the exam sponsor was there, and they were able to interview him right at the time, and then we went back.
That was great work.
So it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, I think that underscores how really important it is that the assessment ecosystem work closely with one another, right? Because it's not just the testing program who can carry out this responsibility. It can't just be Pearson or other delivery vendors. It's that whole, I'll call it almost like a supply chain, right? As they are working with one another that are taking steps to protect it. And obviously the proctors in that process or invigilators in that process become really, really important too.
And that's one of the cool things about delivery organizations too. Like you guys mentioned Ray, right?
Yeah.
Ray was a competitive, technically, I guess Ray was a competitor, but we
Yeah.
always worked together on different things that happen because again, it's that public trust thing. And credit card companies do it too when it comes to securing their systems and things like that. But our industry does it. That's one of the things I kind of enjoy about our industry is like, yeah, if we're seeing something or a new technique, like we'll typically share it with each other just to try to make sure that everybody's being as secure as they possibly can, which I think is a great thing. Just
I do too.
Agreed.
I do too. Yeah, well, we just have great people in this industry. The Bryan Friess being one of them.
No, it's guys like you guys.
Well, it is definitely
We'll have a bromigo moment.
I appreciate the people that I get to work with very, very much, and I think I do think we serve a really important role in a really special industry, and I've been so blessed to work for some really incredible folks, and yeah, 2 of them are right here. So yeah, glad that we get to do what we do.
Yep, for sure.
Well, thank you,
right.
Bryan. That's a wrap. Thanks for coming on today. Really appreciate you coming out, sharing your expertise. Really, and again, I said it before. I'm going to say it. From both of us, thank you for the hard work because it is. We joke about it. We have fun together, but at the end of the day, profound impact on the public and on the ability to respect the exams and to believe that certifications and licenses.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for what you guys are doing to bring this, bring more about what we do to the public.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, everyone. That's a wrap for this episode of And It Matters Because. Please reach out, contact us if you have any questions. Also, please, we are now on YouTube, Spotify. Like us, follow us. More episodes to come. Have a great weekend, everyone.